All right, guys, I think we are live. Want to say this is a really cool morning, Monday morning. Good way to start the week with a whole new broadcast for Louisiana. It's Louisiana Entrepreneur Spotlight. We are actually in front of a live audience. I wasn't sure, guys, if we'd be able to pull that off on our first morning, but our first audience has three of the sharpest people in Shreveport-Bossier sitting in it. So
yeah, we've asked them to calm down to keep the chatter, because so many of them.
Yeah, we had to put the bullhorns, have to leave them at the door and all, but maybe for the next few shows.
It's right, get early, Christy.
So this show's an hour long, so we're going till 11, and I know we have several thousand people broadcast watching it live right now. No, I'm sure this will be an easy, fun show where what we're going to focus on, guys, is entrepreneurs. We're looking at what it takes to build a business in the state of Louisiana. And as our first guest, we have Andrew Nations. I want to introduce Molly Corbett. I'm Rob Godet. We have Molly Corbett and Clint McCommon as well. The three of us, were we at lunch or something when we decided to come up with this?
We're always eating and drinking together, so yeah, probably.
Blind Tiger plus,
yeah.
what's that drink you gave
Florida
us?
Days.
Yes, never again.
So we were just kind of brainstorming and said, why don't we try this radio thing? We think it's an opportunity to put the focus on entrepreneurs in the area.
Right.
And John Grinley knows exactly what we're talking about. John Grinley's in the audience, and
Hey, John.
Yeah. So.
Shout out to Coab.
So what do you guys think? We're gonna do this thing or what?
Let's do it, man.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. So Andrew Nations from Great Raft Brewing is our first guest, and I think Andrew, you guys have had a big splash in the Shreveport-Bossier area in the last few months, and so we're really honored you decided to come on and wake up this early and be in our show, the first guest for the Louisiana Entrepreneur Spotlight.
Well, thanks for having me. It should be a fun little panel here to talk about things that we kind of went through for the 2 or 3 years it took us to get off the ground, and talk about entrepreneurship in general. And I'm an open book, so we'll take questions and kind of tell you what worked for us and what didn't.
Well, we talked a little bit, before when you got here, before the show really started, about what really drove you to decide to do this. What made you decide to start your own business like this?
I like to drink a lot of beer, and the easiest way to do that is to brew a lot of beer.
So you started the same way we did, right? Over alcohol.
Pretty much, I fell in love with craft beer while living in DC, and just the science and the art behind brewing something from scratch, and the challenge of doing something as perfect or as close to perfect as you can get it, because it's not always perfect, but kind of fell in love with that process and was really compelled to do something, but more compelled to move back home to my hometown of Shreveport, and start our production brewery right here at home.
Right.
So that was kind of the thought process when we talked about it for probably 2 or 3 years before we even got serious about putting pen to paper and got serious with all that goes in the planning a business like this.
So you're from the Shreveport-Bossier area, right?
Right. I'm the co-founder. My wife is the other part of it.
Is your wife from here as well?
We're both from here. We're high school sweethearts.
Awesome.
Nice.
And then
Where'd you guys go to school?
My wife went to Baylor, and I went to Northwestern in Anchorage.
Okay.
And then so we didn't date in college, but we got jobs separately in Washington, D.C., and got back together up there, and got married 3 years ago.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, so it's funny how things work out, but decided to come back home and brew some beer.
Now, does Lindsay, does she love the beer like you do?
Absolutely. I mean, she's a huge part of everything we do.
Yeah.
The marketing efforts and day to day. I mean, she's in it.
Whose idea was it, Andrew, to call that beer Southern Drawl?
It was mine.
That's I had a cocktail party Friday night.
Okay.
My brother's in town from Virginia. I'm from Virginia myself.
Okay.
And I'm at the Peters Liquor, which, Peters doesn't carry anything unless I ask them to. They just keep it basic, right?
Sure.
So they've got Stella Artois now because I asked them to. But I asked them to pick up some of that Southern Drawl, and they did. And I grabbed a couple of 6-packs of that, and it was a huge hit Friday night.
Cool.
So, and this is at a cocktail party. So, we're drinking. To me, it was a craft beer. It's appropriate at a cocktail party because it's an elevated taste.
Sure.
So, but I just love the name of that. I think it's marketing genius.
Well, a lot of our names come from music. To be honest, we use an app called Wunderlist, which is great for entrepreneurs and anyone trying to manage a lot of different things. So we have, our team's on Wunderlist. We can keep this to-dos, just random stuff. So literally, right when we started planning this, we started keeping a Wunderlist of beer names. So every time we heard a song or something that aligned from the song, just anything, most of them are throwaways, but that app is really nice to have on your phone and keep us a long list of stuff. So that Southern Drawl was a line. Of course, it's the accent that Southerners have, long way vowels, but it was a Patterson Hood song. He's the lead singer of Drive By Truckers, which is a big, one of our favorite bands, at least mine. And just kind of heard it on the radio and grabbed my phone. It's like, that really makes sense for what we're trying to do. So our stuff is music inspired.
That's great.
All of us up here are entrepreneurs, and actually we have several people in the audience. Everybody down there is entrepreneurs, and that's what this program is about. So we'd like to hear, what was the inspiration for this? What was your background? Did you have experience doing this? And I'm curious how you came up with the name too.
Sure. Then we'll start with the name, and we'll kind of start and go in reverse order. The name is after the Great Red River Raft. My wife and I are from here and wanted a name that resonated with locals, had something to do with local history, as opposed to it's Lindsay, Andy's Lane Brewery. Like, that didn't work for us. We wanted something that one, that people that knew what it was about could relate to it, and another, it was a point where we could educate people. One of the reasons Shreveport's here, one of the biggest cities or the biggest city in North Louisiana. So the Great Red River Raft was, in simple terms, a log jam, but it was 100 miles long back in the late 1830s on the Red River. So the Corps of Engineers commissioned a guy named Henry Miller Shreve, another guy named Woodruff, to come down and use explosives and snag boats and basically open up the waterways for commerce through North and South Louisiana. So at that time, it was once it was open, it was a time of great prosperity for the city of Shreveport. Many reasons why Shreveport has flourished in that time, and once, again, the biggest city in North Louisiana. So for us, we had to have a cool name that resonated with locals, but maybe not everyone knew about.
Did you guys go straight for that name, or did you have several that you played with?
That was the easiest. That came pretty fast, actually. We started doing brand development and logo development as soon as we started writing the business plan.
That's the fun part, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was fun. The boat in our logo is a replica of Henry Miller Shreve's snag boat, the Heliopolis.
It's an actual replica of the actual boat.
Right, because we basically had to start from scratch because we were trying to use imagery from the original boat, but our designer said, let's just start from scratch and design something, illustrate something that's really close to his original snag boat. And that's kind of where all our imagery comes. We just started keeping like an Evernote notebook of just imagery and stuff that we could pass along to our design team, and fill out the brand of what we kind of want to be with that vintage look, with the old style everything, log jams.
It's really beautiful, and it's so encapsulated. I mean, what a love letter to this region to have this business named this way, and really clearing a log jam is kind of what you do as an entrepreneur,
right?
Isn't it?
That's a good way to put it.
Wow, I'm proud of myself.
The log
Thank
jam.
you.
That's an awesome.
I got more where that came from,
You
baby.
can go home now. You're done.
It's also, you can think of it in those terms as just entrepreneurship in general, but also in terms of selling some craft beer.
Yeah.
Because like I said, the South, to us, is kind of the last frontier for craft beer and selling craft beer. So we're fighting the log jam, if you will, every day.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But you're doing well. I see your product everywhere, and your can design, by the way, I just saw the recently corrupt can design just at the Artini party Saturday. But
Okay,
I
so
saw
that was commotion. Yeah,
was a commotion,
Reason Corrupt,
okay.
we're not canning, which people were pretty upset about that, but we might one day. So we're Southern Drawl, the pale lager, and commotion, the pale ale, we're canning. But yeah, those cans actually will hit market today or tomorrow. The pale ale is just now getting out there.
Yeah, they just showed me a kind of hint of it. They had it at their booth. But obviously, that Southern Drawl can design is really neat. Is that something you guys design yourself, or do you have someone from the outside help you out?
We worked with several people to do that. So when we started thinking about what we wanted on cans, we knew we wanted a full illustration type can, as opposed to like a single iconic image with just some copy and text, blah blah blah. So we started looking around for things that inspired us, things that we liked, and we're looking at some artwork in our house hanging up from a guy that does concert promotions and playbills and music, venue posters. He's in Tennessee actually, so we had all of his work hanging on the wall for 4 or 5 different concerts that we attended. We're like, well, let's call this guy up, see if he wants to be included in this project. So again, we started brainstorming general high-level imagery that we wanted for the brand, and he started working with our design firm that was in Austin. That we work with because they had specific experience in branding for breweries and the red tape you have to go to for federal label approval and all that fun stuff, all the little trademarks, and Surgeon General, all that fun stuff you have to get on a can. They have that experience. So we work with them kind of collaboratively with the illustrator in Tennessee.
Did you guys do a real quick patent search, or I mean a trademark search for the name and everything
Yeah.
to make sure you guys?
So yeah, we did all that stuff, and IP is a and trademark in general is a really big thing right now with breweries. It takes some names suck. Like finding a name for a beer. I mean, if you think you've got a good name, you've got to go back and do all your research. You pay a lawyer to file your trademarks, which isn't a terribly big expense. Protecting the trademark is a bigger expense if and when you have to do that. But I mean, we've got in that list I was talking about, we've got probably 100 different names, maybe 2 or 3 of them that we'll actually use one day. But yeah, trademarking and get your names perfect.
Right, because you guys actually trademark the actual beers as well. It's not just
Absolutely.
the brand
It's
name,
huge.
but it's all of the new releases of beers and things.
Right. We did all the research and make sure all the marks are clean.
So
all that.
talk about how you came up with the idea for this. What made you get into the beer business?
Again, I love beer. I love the process of creating something.
I know you were in
From
DC
scratch.
before you came here with
Yeah.
it, right?
Right.
What were
Yeah,
you doing
so,
in DC?
So my background, we'll go back to that, is in technology. So I moved up to DC to take a job in the data centers with Amazon.com. So keeping all their databases up to date, break fix, all that fun stuff, and these massive data centers that run Amazon.com.
Just an observation. One of the things about startup communities, and you can get back to that thought. This is a quick observation: is 85% of people who start a business have an expertise in something. If they're engineers, whether it's beer or technology or biotechnology. So it's just interesting to me. You were an engineer, but you moved into the beer industry, and it was an interesting observation that you actually went into a totally different
Right.
market.
Yeah, and it wasn't because you hear a lot of these entrepreneurs sometimes that are saying, well, I couldn't stand my day job anymore. I like my day job for the most part. It was fun. I left Amazon. I worked with SiriusXM, so we right behind the studios. So we'd go to lunch and George Clinton would be walking around. That was pretty cool, right? That was pretty awesome. So I wasn't really kind of fed up my day job. I was just really passionate about starting my own business and brewing beer, and my wife is the same. It was a lot easier with my wife because she's much smarter than me. A lot of people ask, oh, what's the secret? How'd you do it? I was like, just marry someone a lot smarter than you. So for us, it was perfect time because she was just finishing her MBA. We're getting the plan together, and it's everything kind of in terms of timing and moving back home to Shreveport was perfect for us. But to go back to your question, this really, when moving to DC, my eyes were open at so many different more brands in terms of breweries from all over the world, from all over the U.S. If you think of this market, we've probably got maybe a couple hundred, probably close to 1,000 SKUs in terms of individual brands of beers on the shelf. But up there, it's easily 50 times that. So it's very competitive in that space. But there's also so many different beers that you've probably never had. So it was fun to go in and try something new, new styles, new breweries, and it's got started. We started a blog, really, a couple friends. There's no one that you think DC is such a big market for anything. No one was really talking about beer in that area. So we started DCBeer.com with some other guys, and it was just writing about beer. Like this place is doing a new beer program. They've got 20 tap lines. They're doing special cask programs. They're doing beer dinners. So it really just started a means of educating people on what's new in the area, where to go to find good beer. So this is 7 years ago where it wasn't craft beer wasn't nearly as popular, and you couldn't walk into any bar and find really good beer. So that kind of morphed into kind of an educational thing where we were hosting events. We formed an LLC. We were helping new brands when they enter the market say, you need to be at this bar, do these events. We're hosting beer dinners and all kinds of cool stuff. So we kind of formed a small LLC, did some advertising, and then from there, that's kind of where it took off, where I wanted to do my own thing. Kind of dip my toe just a little bit into owning our own business.
Now, you guys came back to Shreveport from partly because it was your hometown, but was there do you see Shreveport as a competitive market for you to bring? You thought you'd come here and start a craft brewery, and you think you'd be competitive, or do you just want to make it happen regardless?
Right now, it's going to get more competitive. There's definitely a need for it. It's not. I can't say it's super competitive. There's not. When we started, there wasn't. And I think the closest brewery to us is in Tyler, in Texas. So it wasn't a brewery for 100 miles. The average American lives within like 6 to 10 miles of a brewery. Not so much for North Louisiana or even South Louisiana. So the need was there. And I use an analogy of peeling the layers of an onion. Lindsay hates that. We just started, when we started planning on paper, it wasn't like we're going to do this, actually. We were like, let's just see what it looks like. we're learning more about the industry. Let's just start diving in some of the metrics, some of the numbers, some of the per capita consumption rates, and just seeing what's possible and seeing if we could convince ourselves that there's a need and that we could, maybe pull this off.
Louisiana's a pretty big beer drinking state, right?
Yeah.
We must be way up there in
A little bit.
consumption
Right.
versus breweries, right?
Right. So when we were doing some of this research, we looked at it and we're like, wow, Louisiana is 4th or 5th in terms of consumption per capita, and 45th,
Sounds
48th
about right.
in terms of the number of breweries. So even right now there's only 9 breweries in the whole state. We're still drinking a lot of other people's beer.
Right.
I think it's like a lack of refined palate, maybe. You see
Perhaps.
a lot of beers are like we would call subpar in quality.
Right. Right.
That's okay. I tell people drink what you like. Try, don't be afraid to try something new.
Right.
But for us, we definitely saw the need immediately when we started doing research and putting some of the numbers together.
Andrew, just to get back to some of the things that we were talking about in the pre-show and really take that entrepreneur angle, you were talking to us about how your vision for starting your business was really more on the business owner side and not the self-employed side.
Right.
Talk to us about what you wanted to do about bringing someone in rather than doing it yourself.
Yeah, so I had experience. I've been homebrewing for probably 5 or 6 years at the point we started planning. And I went to like an online brewing course, coupled with some internships local DC area. There's a big difference between that and brewing 700 gallons of beer. It's kind of like if you're watching Food Network all day and then you're like, oh, I'm going to open a restaurant. I'm going to be awesome at it. It's not quite the same thing running the kitchen like it is a production brewery. Mm-hmm. So for us, we said, we really need to hire someone that has that professional, years and years of professional experience and can bring that level in depth and engineering to the table. For one, because we demand that quality of beer from day one, and for another, it looks great on paper, because without that, it's just Lindsay and I with zero experience owning a business, running a business, and just a little bit more experience in brewing beer. So it really kind of made our plan come together when we said we're from here. Lindsay's with her MBA is putting all this together and running the backside of the business. I'll do day-to-day operations, and by the way, our brewer was started out in biochem and then went back and got his master's in brewing science, and he's got 15 years of experience.
Wow.
So before we hired him, before we found the right candidate, we knew it was going to be a challenge because we had all these requirements, things that we wanted. Personality was a big thing. When we started interviewing Harvey, he was still in Australia brewing, so it took a month to do interviews, and he was passionate about doing something unique in the South and always wanted to live in the South. And we agreed on doing lager, which is different. 2/3 of our flagships are lagers, but he agreed, on a personal level on everything we're trying to do, and kind of fell in love with the culture here. And he's been here a year now and hit the ground running.
Let me get this straight. We have a master brewer through Great Raft in our region, and he was brewing in Australia, and he loves the culture here.
So
I just want to make sure that was on the microphone,
I know.
because that's incredible.
he likes
It's your quality of life point, right?
Right.
He's from San Diego. After he
Even better.
Yeah.
graduated from Santa Barbara and then went to UC Davis to get his master's in brewing science. Left there, went to Turkey to start a brew pub with his mentor.
Wow.
For 2 or 3 years, and then Mexico for a couple of years, and then Australia for 3.
My
So
God.
he's been out of States for 9 years. So when he first got over here, we'd be trying beers and stuff. He'd be like, oh, this beer with these Cheez-Its are unbelievable. These Cheez-Its are amazing. I was like, well, they're Cheez-Its. He's like,
That's
we don't.
hilarious.
I've been out of the market. I've been going for 9 years. So like, he'd eat a pork chop, And after being in Turkey, he's like, oh, this is unbelievable.
You're
So
right,
like,
right.
he didn't, don't take certain things for granted. But
That's awesome.
yeah, it was a really good fit and timing to get him over here. And like I said, he hit the ground running. He's been here for a year now in beautiful Shreveport, and started in our kitchen before we signed our lease.
I love it. And not to go deep into any area we don't need to talk about, but from an investor standpoint, having that skilled person as a part of your package, it's got to be attractive to an investor.
It helps, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Rather than just you and Lindsay
Right.
with a dream and an idea. I mean, that was a really strategic move for you for moving forward.
Absolutely. And put that on paper. We're very realistic about what we're proposing to people in terms of the amount of money we're looking to raise, the plan, the volumes of beer, the ROI. I think, and a lot of people, some of our investors would see that number, and it wasn't beautiful, right? Beer takes time to make, and it's not like an oil well. So people saw the numbers, and they might not be impressed, but I think they're more impressed with the fact that we're tell them like it was. It's it's not a fast ROI, and I think they appreciate it more than anything.
What was the kind of the layout of time that you gave investors when you were talking to them?
We don't guarantee obviously anything in projections. I think it was like 4 or 5 years in terms of your initial investment.
And you're already exceeding those goals.
We're doing well. I
Yeah.
I won't say exceeding because a lot of that's just gross numbers, but Shreveport's drinking a lot of beer. I don't know if we're still in the honeymoon phase. We've only been at it for 4 or 5 months, but we're gonna keep brewing it.
It's a point of pride, man. Just having, being able to pull that off the shelf in the cooler, and this is ours.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I was at Brookshires Online last night, and I still go. I don't need my beer, obviously, but I still go to see it on the shelf. It's crazy.
I bet, man.
Very
I bet
few
that's
people
the
realize
coolest
what
thing.
how many all the the hoops just with the federal government, much less state and local, we had to jump to just to get a can of beer on the shelf.
Right.
It's still pretty cool to walk by and see it.
Yeah,
That's us.
So what's your
Absolutely.
background from a business standpoint? Did you have a lot of learning to do, or did you come in with knowing all of the hoops you did need to jump through to pull this together?
So my wife is very, she's more business oriented than I am with her MBA. The biggest thing we did, the smartest thing I say, is we found a very good lawyer that had brewery specific experience with all the things you have to with bonds and insurance and all this liability, right? You're making alcohol. It's a huge responsibility, something that we take very seriously. But and this kind of goes with the general theme is we found a good partner like Harvey, and that comes at a cost. But like I said, it could be more expensive if you don't do it right the first time.
Right.
So for us, our general approach was hire someone that's done it, that's got the experience and can kind of take our lead, but offer that experience. So with Harvey, he's very good about knowing what decisions we need to make and knowing where he can provide input.
And Lindsay doesn't just have an MBA. I mean, she's working in marketing and strategic planning. So she's got to be a great team player for the success of your business.
Right. So she still has her full-time job with Cisco, which made it this whole approach very possible. I was unemployed, if you will, for over a year, and Lindsay was able to keep her job with Cisco Technologies in Shreveport. So she's at home all day on HD video,
Nice.
which is weird. But
Well, shoot, that's not the first couple operation that got a business off the ground. I mean, I couldn't have done what I was able to do with Molly Corbett Photography if it hadn't been for my husband being able to bring home a salary that would support our household.
it wouldn't be possible for us, to be honest.
Yeah.
And then so she's really doing Cisco full time and Great Raft full time. So
She's a busy lady.
She is. She's awesome.
Now,
Makes the whole thing run.
that's a real point of necessity for local entrepreneurs. A lot of us are trying to make something happen while still paying our rent and mortgages at the same time. So it's encouraging to hear that you did have that in place, that we're not the only ones doing it. You did it too.
Yeah, it wasn't fun, but we got it done.
Right,
Like I said, it
it's
wouldn't be possible without Lindsay's keeping her
Right.
job.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Well, it sounds to me, obviously you guys did a lot of research, a lot of work into planning, hired good people, doing all the right steps for starting a business. But what are some things, even despite all your work, that you didn't see, coming, that were kind of like minor roadblocks along the way that you could like kind of tell other entrepreneurs to try and get their business started or moving forward?
And planning or execution.
Either way.
Yeah, really.
The first one I'm thinking of is execution. We just knocked a $10,000 hole in the wall that still pisses me off. Our cans come on empty pallets that are 8 feet 11, so just shy of 9 feet. Our dock doors are 8. They told us that 3 days before the cans arrived, so we had to work with the local contractor, Integrity, to knock a hole in the wall,
Yeah.
and masonry work and iron work and a new garage door, which again sucks. It's $10,000 that we didn't think we were gonna have to spend.
Right.
Little things like that, for breweries, I'm not sure if this is a generic. It's probably good advice, but for any company, you need to budget at least twice what you think you're going to spend.
Sure.
Building something like this, things always pop up. For us in the execution, it wasn't too terrible with the building. We picked the right building. We didn't have any major plumbing issues with the old building, or major build out issues. Were I think over budget, but not terribly on the build out. You just got to be flexible. You've got to plan for the worst, and hope for the best.
He had his attorney in place. That
was probably,
Yeah, that's important. I
Was it
think that might be one of the last things we think of. We're just trying to keep our plates spinning in the air, and we don't think about the legal side. Now, not all of us have such a legal intensive entrepreneurship
Right.
like you did, but that's a good point for our listeners that you gotta get those things checked off. It's not just the LLC. It's not just making sure you're paying Uncle Sam, but you want to make sure you're protecting yourself legally.
Another thing, touch base on what you mentioned. We kind of partnered with a friend of ours at Port City Brewing, which is funny, because people call Shreveport Port City, but Port
Right.
City in Old Town Alexandria, one
Yeah.
of the premier breweries on the Mid Atlantic, is doing some awesome beers, and they're exploding. Their growth is through the roof. I think it's over 100% year over year. And they've been at it for about 3 or 4 years at this point. But he was just a friend in general from the beer scene. But we asked a lot of his time to say, hey, a sanity check. Like, this is what we're thinking we're going to do in terms of numbers, projections. And he would say, okay, well, your boiler is going to cost twice that, so change that number. Or your labor, you're going to need more labor than you're thinking in the first year, change that number, and your legal fees and all these things. I think most people will, even if it's bouncing ideas off people and numbers, it was very beneficial for us to do that. And I think we discovered a lot of things that would have been huge showstoppers.
Did you have a decent group of mentors you could go to whenever you needed advice and things to get done?
Yeah, I think Lindsay, both on the business side with some of her professors at George Mason with her MBA program,
Nice.
and me with Bill Butcher of Port City was huge. And the best thing he did for us is didn't spoon feed us anything. He didn't give us any numbers, business plan. He would validate things, but he made us do our homework. And we
That's
just
smart.
saw him last week in DC, and he's still a huge friend and a mentor for me.
Yeah,
So he
I
really
think
made
that's
you walk
great.
through the fire. He
Right.
didn't try to sugarcoat anything or,
Right.
or fix anything for you. It's really a journey you have to take
But
yourself.
he helped him with his trajectory if he was headed in the wrong direction, and I
Yeah.
think that's really important. I know in my business, we don't really like to help each other in the commercial photography business.
Sure.
And I find that a little disingenuous, to be completely honest with you. I mean, I don't want to teach you how to be a really good competitor of my business, but I like the idea of mentoring and helping each other. And we have opportunities to do that. Local high schools are always sending kids around looking for somebody to be their business mentor. And so I have a chance to pour into somebody in that way. But I love it that you were able to reach out to someone. I think that's really what's distinctive about the startup community. We have to think of it in terms of a community. I mean, I know I pitched an idea to Rob, and he started asking me hard questions. I was looking at trying to scale my business. How does a photographer scale her business in this market? And Rob asked me the tough questions like, well, where's the demand? And I'm like, ooh. It's a hard thing to hear, but you need to hear it before you go running off buying a bunch of equipment and looking for photographers that shoot, and they're going to be sitting still because there's no work for it.
Yeah, that's tough to quantify. For us, we had numbers that we could get from industry folks. The Brewers Association is real big, but to go back to what you were saying, it's in the brewing community, at least for craft brewers, it's a big us versus them. So people are very helpful in information exchanges and just helping each other get off the ground. I was talking with Kirk Coco from NOLA Brewing down in New Orleans. We're doing an event a huge event in DC in May called Saber. It's a food and beer pairing thing.
Nice.
And I noticed that he's sending beer up there. I was like, hey, why don't you sip your beer up here with your normal distributor? We'll put it on the same pallet and save a couple $100.
Oh, that's nice.
Or like, hey, where did you get Andrew at Parrish? Like, who are you using for your glass? We're starting to do Bomber seasonal bottle suits. Like, do you like them? Are they horrible? Who do I need to stay with? And most guys are 24 hours later get an email.
It seems to be like the secret of success is like you obviously have a great plan. You know what you want to do, but you ask for help. You hire a good lawyer. You get a brewmaster. You ask for your peers and your mentors. You don't expect to work as an island, do it all yourself.
Right.
But you're willing to let go and realize that there's certain things you just don't know yet.
You don't know what you don't know.
Right.
Yeah, we don't make decisions in a vacuum, and we ask for help. I think most people are eager to help.
Now, did you guys do anything like with the state, like a small business associate development, things like that? Was you getting assistance at all from that way?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So
That's a really good question.
we're getting involved with a program with the Louisiana Economic Development called Angel Investor Tax Incentive. It's a
Nice.
long acronym. That's ridiculous.
We love
It's
the
really-
LED.
It's a great program where it was a ton of red tape and a ton of documentation to jump through, stuff that we really weren't comfortable sharing with strangers for the most part. But in the end, we were very glad to do it. But what it says is there's this big pool of money, and if you can prove yourself as a certified LED business, which is pretty simple, you're providing jobs in Louisiana, you're not shipping your products out of the state, all this stuff to be considered a LED business, you have access to this pool of funds. So I forget what our number was, but it's something. It was worth our time. I think it was somewhere between 10 and 15% tax incentives on the dollar for every dollar you invest in the company.
Right, but
So-
the investor side of it is a 35% tax
Is it
credit.
up to
I mean,
30?
that's extensive.
Yeah. So
yeah.
they'll there's only a X amount of dollars in the
It's a
pool.
pool.
So you
$5
can ask-
million
Right.
annual cap. Yep.
You can ask for X amount of money if it's there. To say, well, we can't give you 35, we can give you 20 or whatever it is.
Right.
So for us, it was a pretty big pain for all the paperwork, but at the end,
Sounds like it's worth it.
it absolutely was. We did that way before we started pitching to investors. So we're talking about the plan. Like, oh, by the way, 15-25% of your money you'll get back on your
Yeah,
state
let's say
taxes.
something about this for our listeners. This is the Louisiana Economic Development website. You can find it at louisianaforward.com. And the program that Andrew's talking about is Angel Investor Tax Credit. This is interesting. I hadn't seen this before, so I'm excited that you brought that up.
Yeah, there's some criteria to be considered an LED.
Sure.
I mean, we're making alcohol and they approved it, so I can't.
Yeah. Yeah, if you guys can get it, then if you're grooming dogs or
Yeah,
mowing
right.
lawns, you can definitely get it.
Might have a little easier too.
Yeah.
It's helpful, and a lot of things
Yeah.
that they require to be considered an LED, you should be doing anyway. I mean, you should have that data
Common
Right.
sense, right.
as a business owner or someone trying to get some money in general.
Right.
Without going into specifics about investors, can you talk about how you raised money? How did you guys pull that together? Because that's one of the, besides mentorship, that's
That's
probably
the
the
big
other
one.
big challenge
Yeah.
for startups.
It was a big number that we needed. So in beer, it's very hard to make money under a certain amount of scale. It's kind of like a crawfish. I use an analogy a lot. It's kind of like a crawfish boil for 3 people. At some point, it's really not worth your time
Right.
if you're not making X amount of barrels or getting so much beer out the door, which is, we're not really concerned with these huge numbers and blowing up and just pouring beer the whole state. We do it because we love it. But in reality, if you're not making money, you're not doing anything. So you got to make money. So
You
we
needed to prove you had a model. You could build a real business here first. That was the first thing you really did. Right.
Right.
Or a
So
business plan or something.
So I think when a lot of people come and see our brewery, they're like, oh, this is so big. And it physically, yeah, it looks big. It's a lot of stainless steel, but we're still 100 times smaller than Avita. I mean, we're tiny, and we're trying to do 2,400 barrels this year, which is huge for a small brewer. But in reality, we're pretty small brewer. But going back to raising the money, obviously we did our homework. We spent a lot of time on asking ourselves tough questions. The LED was a big part of it. We're saying, hey, we need this money, but we really didn't sugarcoat anything in terms of the ROI, in terms of the amount of money. I think a lot of people were they saw that the realistic numbers and the realistic ROIs, and were stepping up and saw the need, obviously. So it was tough. The first one's always the hardest, but once we got the first one, we're getting more comfortable with the pitch. We're refining our business plan. Your business plan's never done. There's so many things that we did with our business plan that it was important to go through the exercise to do, but no one really cares in terms of like,
Right.
these are, this is what Avita Purple Haze, this is how much market share they have on, in convenience stores on the south side of town. And nobody cares that, but it's worth our time to know and see those numbers. So a lot of it was stuff that never really made it into the full plan, but it was worth the exercise
It was an
itself.
exercise.
The value was an exercise.
You were learning the market and how to pull this together and to be able to talk intelligently about it. I mean, how many of your investors have actually sat down and read your full business plan? Some probably did.
Right. I don't know. That's a tough one. These guys are very smart. This wasn't their first investment, but again, the first one was the hardest. But after that, they tell a friend, or you might want to get involved in this. And for these type of people that have this kind of money to essentially throw away, because that's the mindset you have to have as an investor. It wasn't a huge amount of money, but to us it was, and it was a large amount of money. But something, like I said, we had to raise a lot of money to make sure we weren't living week to week, and we had to build a pretty expensive system.
Speaking of that, like a lot of us, like look at Cohab and stuff like that, or photographers, we can, with our little small computers, where we make a product and have a demonstration prototype for an investor. But like you said, you can't like do a home craft the same like flavors. Once you go into big volume, like how did you convince investors that you're going to have a good tasting beer without actually having the beer for them to taste, because you didn't have the facilities that you need the money to buy?
Sure. So we started with that approach. I would do homebrew batches that I think would be pretty close to what we'd scale up to. We found early on that the beer really didn't matter. It's what the numbers look like on paper. You can say whatever you want, but or you can present whatever you wanted. But the beer, we stopped doing that 2 or 3 in meetings because people. It's not they didn't care, but they're smart enough to know that no matter how good it tastes, it's going to be different things.
It was the market opportunity they really were interested in.
Right. It's the opportunity and the numbers. So we stopped doing that pretty quick. But obviously, depending on what you're doing, if you're doing a beta or even if you have a sandbox environment for a piece of software, having something you put your hands on is pretty clutch.
How did you guys pick the space that you're located in? How did you find that?
We were looking at another piece of property, kind of closer to like kind of between us and Herbie K's, and drove past it. And I was like, wow, that place looks twice or 3 times as big as we need, but let's just go look at it. So we went and looked at it, and it was just beautiful. It's been vacant for aesthetically. I won't say it was beautiful, but in terms of what we needed, it was vacant for probably about a year at that point. With the glass windows, and it had a bar, not like a tap, like a count. It was a parts counter. It used to be a plumbing supply house. But it was just all glass windows, and we could really visualize what we want to do with this space. And the ceiling height was perfect, the location was perfect, dock doors, and but it's twice as much as we really needed. So we kind of went into it saying, well, let's see what we can do in terms of it's more rent than we wanted to bite off, but let's think about our growth model and see how much space we're going to need, which is a great decision because we're growing pretty fast. Again, it was bigger than we wanted, but I think it fits perfect for us, and it was a really good match.
Can you talk about your growth? How have you guys been doing? Are you hitting your goals, and what are the plans for the future?
Yeah, we're doing great. We're doing a lot more volume in the tasting room than I anticipated. People are coming. We're open Thursdays and Fridays from 4 to 8, and Saturdays noon to 8. So pretty limited hours, and we close early typically. We're just open till 8, so we're not a full bar, but the volume through the tasting room is more than we anticipated, which is great because those margins are better. We're cutting out 2 middlemen. In general growth, we just keep brewing beer. Our order for March, or our projected volume from our distributor here in Shreveport in March was more beer than we could physically produce. And that doesn't include Ruston and Monroe. We're expanding there next week. So we've got smaller accounts, kind of a smaller footprint in those areas. But we're brewing at this point about twice as much as often, at least as we thought we would. We're brewing probably 2 or 3 times a week, which is great. Our tanks are full right now. That wasn't supposed to happen to the end of our first operating year, much less the first quarter.
Right.
So we've actually ordered more tanks, which is they'll be fabricated now. They're probably 3 months out, but that'll help us grow and keep up with demand as we roll out new products.
So any plan to scale and add more production capacity?
Yeah, those tanks will increase our production probably 40-50%, and we can brew all day long as we have a tank to ferment it in. So your bottleneck is your fermentation tank. So every brewery in America is growing, not everyone, but the vast majority is growing like crazy. So people are buying tanks left and right. You just gotta have the space to ferment.
So sort of tank business.
Seriously.
Fermentation tanks.
Note to self. Are you canning on the premises?
We are. That's another decision we decided to do. So Shreveport, again, with our research, we figured out that Shreveport is very off-premise focused, meaning people consume alcohol off the premise. On-premise would be a restaurant or a bar. It's something like, I think in this market, like 70-30, 70% off, whereas the bottom half of the state with all Bourbon Street and tourism, it's very much an on-premise market, at least in New Orleans. So we knew that going into it, we knew we'd had to get our beer in a can or bottle pretty fast to take advantage of that. So I think, we were probably 90 days in brewing in terms of just draft before we had Southern Draw out on the market. So we knew that going into it, so we bought their canning line. I think it took them 6 months to make it because they had a back order, which is also American made out in Boulder, Colorado. So yeah, we've been canning Southern Draw for about 2 months now, and Commotion Pale Ale will hit stores this week.
I love the it's not just that typical 6-pack holder. It's a really good. Tell us about that. What is that? It just covers the whole top of the can. It's black. It's very distinctive. It's an elevated experience. I'm sure it is.
Well, the typical Seagull Killer plastic rings.
Yeah, Seagull Killer.
We played around with them, and it's got this big lever, and it's like you're looking at it, you're like, there's no way we can be efficient getting cans into a 6-pack. So we ditched that and went to this, it's called PackTech. It's better for the environment.
Yeah.
98% of it's with consumer waste.
I love that.
It's made out in Oregon. And getting physically doing it is just you snap onto the lid, but it holds them. Sometimes it's kind of a pain to pull it out. The trick is to twist and pull up, not down.
Okay.
That's why they stay in there better, because if you pull down, you'll be there all day. But it also protects the top of the can. So our cans come empty like this, and then we have the tops that fall, and seam them. But it protects the top, so God knows what goes on in behind a grocery store or truck. There's all kinds of.
I'm
nasty
always
stuff.
wiping that can off.
Right,
you
right.
never know.
So
yeah.
that protects it to a certain degree.
It's just an elevated experience.
Right.
You feel like you're drinking a prestigious beer when you pop one of those things open. It's nice.
Thanks. It's
Yeah.
it's
Mission
safer.
accomplished. A little bit more expensive, better for the environment, and a good aesthetic quality.
Right.
To it.
And they're reusable. So we've got folks. Somebody at the tasting room brought us back a dozen of them. We can reuse them. They'll go right back into production.
Get
That's neat.
out.
Same with we're using the case trays too. So when we go to our grocery store, I'll see 4 or 5 case trays. I'm gonna go take those.
Yeah.
It cost me 4 cents a piece.
Right on, man. Absolutely. That's
smart.
great. I like it. Do we want to take questions from our audience members in a little bit?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
You guys think about a few questions. We
Give
have
you a
about
warning.
15 more minutes, and probably about 5 minutes. We'll ask you guys some questions as well. We'd love to hear what you guys think.
Can I go local for a second? Like,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
we are trying to, like, hope for Shreveport Bossier to grow for business. Like, as far as your experience in doing business in Shreveport, so I know you
Good
wanted to
question,
come
yeah.
here. What was like the good and bads of working here?
And be honest, because that's the kind of show we do.
Yeah, we
The,
want to address real issues.
The good is people were very excited about it. It was new. People that have traveled anywhere kind of know what other markets are doing in terms of a brew pub model, or just most places you go in America you can find a local brewery. So people were very eager. The bad part is it was so new. So we were going to get like zoning permits. Like zoning was pretty easy. Bar permits and things that you need to run a business.
Mm-hmm.
And people are like, well, we don't know if you're a restaurant or you're a food manufacturer or alcohol manufacturer or a bar. We're just gonna make you do all the paperwork, because we don't, and that's fine, right? But we're so new that they didn't have ways to regulate us or forms to fill out or ways to tax us. They'll figure that out pretty soon, I'm sure. But
Working
it
on that
was
right
so
now,
new.
probably.
So again, it wasn't, it didn't know what you don't know.
Right.
But it wasn't prohibited by any means,
So you blazed a trail for other breweries.
Yeah, I
to
think
come
so.
in.
Us and Red River, I think we shared some information a couple times about the way we did zoning and.
Well, that's
Just the
interesting.
fact that-
So you've had some good communication with Red River and actually already kind of doing that community entrepreneur.
Yes, some
back and
we.
forth.
I won't say we talk very often because we've all got our heads down.
Sure.
Those guys are brewing, I think, on the weekends. They've all got full-time jobs, and we're just so busy trying to maintain and keep Shreveport watered that. Yeah, I mean,
We're so great.
The watering hole.
we're just so so busy. But if we do events and stuff, we say hello. We try
Nice.
some stuff, and then they know they
Good.
can get stuff anytime they need it, and vice versa. So. There's definitely that community throughout the whole state, I think, because it's us versus
I
them.
think an interesting angle you have is having been in technology and been in the data world. Imagine doing what you're doing, because we want to draw tech startups here. Obviously, everybody knows that.
Mhm.
So having done what you did on the beer side, any advice in the tech world?
Um,
I'm sure you get asked that question all the time.
it doesn't have to be new, just to find a way to do it better. Find open APIs.
Yeah.
Develop stuff on top of other platforms that make things better. Just keep coding, write stuff that's cool, play around with stuff, and kind of be comfortable with working on something and just throwing it away.
Yeah, that failing
Be willing
forward
to
is
throw
tough.
it away.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
No, no. What about your marketing for the local area? So your name got out there really fast.
Yeah.
And I know you did it like you guys were at Artini this most recently. You guys also, my brother had a Slow Foods event, and you were out there giving out those those free samples, which we appreciated. Did you do a lot of that like hands-on? You're just going to events, but you do put any money into marketing as well?
We started much earlier than we'd actually marketing and spreading the word before we actually had product. I think we probably started 6 to 8 months before we were probably, when we first finally had beer out the door, we were probably just at tipping point where people were saying, all right, whatever, you've been talking about yourself for so long, you don't have any beer, I'm moving on. Like, we were just exhausted that patience. Well,
Would you have waited? I mean, hindsight, would you have started it a little later, maybe?
I don't think so. It was,
Okay.
it's such in this market, if it was another market that people knew craft beer very well, it'd have been different. But we really were selling people on a new idea, a new product, things in general. So for us to get started that early and do things like the farm to table, slow foods, events like that, it was great. Get exposure and telling people this is what we're doing. In general terms, I use it a lot. We said yes to everything. If someone, unless it was some huge financial expense that we couldn't burden as a small company, we would say, sure, we'll come pour some beer.
Because your grand opening was packed. Like
Yeah.
everybody knew it was like top of the town.
Mhm.
So y'all did something really well, or a lot of things well at the same time as far as getting word about yourselves.
Yeah, we don't spend any money though. It's all Facebook, Instagram, and
Right
and
on,
Twitter.
baby. That's what
so,
I'm talking
so we
about.
all want to hear it now.
Yeah, we get questions, for, radio advertisements and things probably once a week. But we're running out of places for people to sit. I don't have any beer in any room to brew anymore. We're going as fast as we can. So, and that might change one day. But for now, we don't spend a dime on advertising.
You gonna keep it beer? You gonna give us something to eat in the future?
Probably not. So
Okay.
that's going back to investor pitches. One of the things that we focused on is saying we had no desire to be a restaurant.
Yeah,
And I think a lot of people were like sold.
they
It's
love
like,
that.
Not doing a restaurant sold. Getting the beer out is hard enough.
I heard a rumor though that there's some pizza ordering going on sometimes. Is that
We
true?
allow people to bring anything they want. I mean, we
Yeah.
had a party bring like 2 racks of ribs one Saturday.
Shut up!
Yeah.
Love it.
And then we have the food trucks in the parking lot.
Oh yeah. Okay.
It's always random who's going to
Bring
be
a
there.
nice chest of crawfish. I mean, that would be great.
Oh my
right?
God! Can you imagine?
Crawfish is a different beast, so we'll let people bring it in. As long as they
Yeah.
At least
No
try
ice
to
chest of
clean it.
crawfish.
Just like it's not peanuts.
Scratch that.
As long as
Scratch
they
it.
try to clean up after themselves, we let
Yeah.
people
Gotcha.
about it. We let people bring whatever.
Let's take a
That's
question.
good.
Anybody in the audience come up with a question?
Yeah, I got a question.
This is John Grenley.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
speak up too.
Yeah, so your facility, I'm just trying to get one, I have a dumb question. Let me ask my dumb question first. About your cans versus bottling.
Yeah.
Not knowing much about home brewing and stuff like that, or you did that mainly out of cost, or what was that? Or is it shipping, or is it packaging?
Mainly it's better for the beer. So if it was
Okay.
if it was my choice, everyone would drink a pint glass right off the draft.
Right.
But that's not feasible in this market, or any market really. That's how the brewer intends you to taste it, or right
Okay.
out of the fermenter. The can's better for the beer. It's less oxygen, what we call oxygen pickup, when the top is seamed on the can. So if you notice, sometimes in a bottle there's that big gap. That's hopefully it's CO2. Sometimes it's air. So air is what causes stale beer. So for us, it was better for the beer. It's better for the environment. So Shreveport doesn't even recycle glass, if that's not mind blowing.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But
Somewhat.
I think the number's like 14 days from the time a can is put in the trash. It's back in circulation or recycled in some capacity. I'm not sure if that's.
I love
True.
that you know that and
I'm-
focus
that's
on
great.
it.
I'm not sure if
That's
it's true in
incredible.
That's
every
really
region, but I do know cans are recycled.
So
in
the
Shreveport.
glass not being recycled is a big factor in it?
Not as big as it being better for the beer and better for the environment. I don't know. I don't know if it's cheaper or expensive. Cans are super expensive because they're printing on this can. So our people that make our cans make Coke and Diet Coke. The only difference is it takes them literally an hour to print cans for us that will last us a year.
Wow.
So their minimums are through the roof. I mean, we had to get a full truckload was our minimum, split across 2 different brands. So that was super expensive because you can only use that can for that one brand.
Right.
Whereas with the bottle, you can slap any label you want and get 5 or 4 beers out the door and still just buy 1 pallet of empty bottles, which is our approach for seasonals.
So even before you produce the beer, you have to order the cans to
Oh, yeah.
have it there, and so you're producing to meet the volume of cans you have. So the volume of cans dictates how much you really push out.
Right. So the minimum order for us was 98,102 per brand. So I've got a 6 months, I got 10 months worth of capital or cans tied up sitting in my warehouse. That's not cool.
Yeah.
But that's just
Right.
the reality of cans.
Right.
No, that's why I was asking, because it dovetailed into my bigger question. So you've got all these cans, you got all this stuff. So your location, your footprint right now is scalable to can all 4
Absolutely.
lines.
Yeah,
That's the goal, obviously, your business plan and location wise.
Yeah, it's 28,000. The brew floors, I think it's 18,000 square feet in the office and tasting rooms, and they're 10. So we've got roughly almost 30,000 square feet of room to grow. We're doing cans for the flagship. We'll also very soon move into bottles, large format bottles for seasonal stuff. For that.
Not your growlers. You're talking.
No, growlers are still draft beer to go. We'll do some seasonal stuff, the Christmas beer and the double IPA and things like that will be in a bottle.
Sure, Kelly.
Speaking of seasonal, the ones that know I've kind of tasted maybe guinea pig versions of different. I think y'all had a coffee beer with Rhino Coffee. Is that correct? That
Yeah.
was wonderful.
Okay,
But I
thanks.
only saw it one time, one night.
Yep.
That and then with the Depeche Mode, the little peachy one I had last week was wonderful. So are those kind of just kind of playing around to see what gets people's interest or what?
Right.
For those?
So those are two examples of beer that at some point that we will bottle. I don't know about Depeche Mode because that's probably a trademark issue. So if you notice our in-house beers, we kind of play around with names. We don't file for trademarks, so I'm just playing around. I don't think we'll get in trouble for that unless we actually package it, do a
Pull
label,
at Starbucks.
and get it out the door. But yeah, those are examples of stuff we like to play around with and stuff that we'll do again. The coffee brown we're calling Creature of Habit. That one is filed.
That's a great name.
That'll be the coffee brown with Rhino. We'll probably do that again towards the end of the